With the original Dragon Quest Heroes, Square Enix took its beloved series to Koei Tecmo's Omega Force team to give it the Warriors treatment, much like Nintendo did with Zelda for Hyrule Warriors. This transformed a very traditional menu-driven, turn-based RPG into an over-the-top hack-and-slash action game, where you can mow down many foes at once. While Dragon Quest Heroes 2 improves on the original's combat and world, it still stumbles a bit in the quest to transition Dragon Quest from its RPG roots into a game that feels at home with hack-and-slash action. The story of a pair of cousins fighting off a sudden invasion as they unravel a conspiracy is a lot better than the original Dragon Quest Heroes' dull, monsters suddenly turned violent plot, and it develops in interesting ways. It's no masterpiece, but it did a good job of keeping me engaged, thanks in part to the top-notch localization, which adds a lot of life and humor. Seeing other favorite Dragon Quest characters from previous games is fun too, though they tend to fade into the background of the story after they've been introduced. The story's not the only thing that's seen an improvement, because the moment-to-moment flow has been changed to more resemble the role-playing adventures that inspired it. Rather than just hopping from mission to mission from a hub or menu, there's a semi-open world with unlockable areas you can explore at your leisure. You also progress through areas like towns, forests, fields, and swamps, much like you would in a traditional RPG, battling your way from destination to destination in a way that feels very natural. This, along with the well-rendered visuals, helps the world of Dragon Quest Heroes 2 feel more interesting and alive. There are a lot of different objectives in the combat sections as well. Of course, there are the usual Warriors-inspired missions where you canvas a large battlefield and mow down hundreds of enemies, but there are also big boss fights, maze-like dungeons, protection missions, raids on enemy territory, and even a bit of stealth. The added variety sounds good at first. After all, one of the most frequent complaints levied at Omega Force's games is that they tend to get extremely repetitive. But some of the RPG-inspired quest ideas, particularly the puzzles, feel really out of place. A switch puzzle in a hack-and-slash action game? Like, really? There are numerous long stretches of doing things that don't involve fighting monsters, and they aren't nearly as engaging. They tested my patience more than even the tankiest beasts you go up against. The combat in Dragon Quest Heroes 2 is hardly groundbreaking, but there are some nice new improvements to be found. Your two main characters eventually earn the ability to change into classes like Priest and Martial Artist, which gives them access to different weapons like staves and claws, along with new fighting skills. This allows you to customize how they fight to a degree. An RPG-style progression system has you earning skill points and improving weapon proficiency the more you play as particular classes, and additional skills and buffs can be learned through using and mastering different weapons. Monster medals that let you summon enemies make a return, and they're much more interesting now because some let you actually transform into monsters temporarily and use their powers for wanton destruction. Sure, you may have killed or captured wyverns in previous Dragon Quest games, but have you ever been one before? Well, now you can live the dream! Ultimately, though, beating down hordes of boring weaklings before facing a much bigger threat that actually poses a challenge gets a bit wearisome. And the chaotic battlefields and sometimes finicky camera mean things can get quite confusing. Dragon Quest Heroes 2 feels like a step forward in some ways, but a step back in others. The deeper story and new additions to combat are great, but injecting dull puzzles and other activities to change up the formula doesn't always work out for the best. At least it shows that Omega Force is willing to try new things. Let's hope that the experiments go a little better next time. For more on all things Dragon Quest, stick with IGN.